Rubbish on the streets, bikes to get around, power only by torchlight. This, the state of Cuba, desperately running out of oil supplies because it's reliant on Venezuela for fuel, and the US blocking imports of oil from there threatens to grind this island to a halt. The problem is everywhere to be seen in Havana, and this now a threat to public health. No fuel to power the rubbish trucks. Now,
more American evil. Again, for years and years, Republicans used to say, Hasan, all you say is America bad, America evil. Why don't you get the fuck out of here if you hate it so much? And I tried to explain to them that the reason why I criticize America is because I love the promise of America, and I believe that America could do much better for both its citizens and for citizens everywhere around the world. Nowadays, liberals also fucking say the same shit. Liberals also say, Hasan, all you say is America bad, America evil, America bad, America evil. Except, nowadays, that reality is impossible to avoid. How can you call a nation state that has all of the power, the hegemonic superpower of the planet, doing this to a nation much smaller, much tinier in its that unfortunately has the proximity of a couple hundred miles? How can you call a country that does this to a much smaller nation, starving its population, killing its population deliberately, anything but evil? This is siege warfare.
Oh, it's serious, critical, very critical. It's prone to causing diseases, which are caused by garbage. Please do something about this. And no fuel for homes, schools, hospitals, causing blackouts for much of the day. Cuba's iconic 1950s cars replaced by these electric bikes, the only way to get around in a country being choked off from its supplies. Life in Cuba has become almost unrecognizable for the Caribbean island, which usually attracts millions of tourists a year.
I used to be a driver. I used to drive in El Medron, and I worked every day, but because of the gasoline and oil situation, we've had to take this alternative, find a tricycle to keep moving the population. There's no other way.
Cuba's communist ideology has put it at odds with the world's biggest superpower for years. It's now stuck between accepting...
That's one way to approach it. Put it at odds. More like Cuba's communist revolution is the reason why the largest superpower on the planet has actively punished it, choosing to starve its population, trying to kill its leaders since the beginning of the successful revolution.
White House demands, or facing a crisis that could snowball into catastrophe for citizens. Trump says it needs to make a deal or face the consequences, seeing a potential chance for a Cuban government to fall.
Cuba is right now a failed nation. They don't even have jet fuel to get for airplanes to take off. They're clogging up their runway. We're talking to Cuba right now. I have Marco Rubio talking to Cuba right now. And they should absolutely make a deal because it's really a humanitarian threat.
Caused by you, motherfucker.
America is a region split at the moment. Traditional alliances bending under the pressure of US involvement. These were much needed supplies from Mexico being shipped in last week. But its government now halting shipments after the US threatened tariffs against countries that send supplies to Cuba. But not everyone there agrees with the Sheinbaum administration, with demos against what some Mexicans say is economic suffocation for Cubans, and Chile's far-right president-elect saying it won't be lending Cuba a hand either.
I do not agree with giving direct economic aid to a government that has imposed a dictatorship for more than 60 years and has left the Cuban people in a very deprived, inhumane situation.
Russian tourists at the airport in Havana being repatriated, but while an inconvenience for its holidaymakers, this is potentially an opportunity for Russia itself, because Cuba now needs oil, and badly. Russia could be the one to provide it. With the US-Cuba relationship strained for decades, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the son of Cuban immigrants, is seen to be ramping that up further, accused of a personal agenda or even a lifelong dream to exact regime change. Rubio, for his part, defending the aggressive stance to Bloomberg.
God, we deserve so much worse than we get. It is crazy. There is truly no God. There is truly no karmic justice. It is unfucking bearable. Do you think this is the cost to be paid for Fidel Maga in America for so long? Yeah, we should actually talk about how much Fidel and Che mogged and the ramifications of said mogging. Because, like, look at this ugly ass son of a bitch, okay, with his big old ears, Dumbo looking ass motherfucker, okay? Obviously, he still feels some type of way because of the amount of mogging that him and his fucking parents had to withstand, you know? That's the real reason. Stop, he can hear you. That's why I'm saying it. I want him to hear me with his big old Dumbo ears. Who is Cuban, by the way? Yeah. Narco Rubio literally comes from a family of fucking drug traffickers, okay? That's what's so crazy about it. Like, this motherfucker, his stepbrother was straight up a cocaine dealer, okay? And he's out here being like, oh, we got to take out Venezuela because of the drugs that they're dealing. Like, bitch, take yourself out. God damn. I hate this person so much. I hate him so much. I mean, I obviously hate Donald Trump too. I hate all of them. Yeah, his uncle went to prison for like 30 years. Like, it's not even, not his stepbrother. Sorry, his brother-in-law. His whole family, his whole entire lineage are fucking drug dealers, dude. He is in some ways, unironically, exactly what conservatives claim is happening in the country. And yet they love him, right? Latino immigrant, coming from a Latino immigrant family that literally is like directly related to drug dealers, who then uses his position of power to advance like whatever kind of ethnic sectarianism he is committed to. Isn't that straight up the thing that these guys talk about when they're like, oh, we are being infiltrated by Latinos who are going to use the government for their own personal pet project and their own personal ethnic resentments? Okay. The fuck?
Fundamental problem Cuba has is it has no economy, and the people who are in charge of that country, in control of that country, they don't know how to improve the everyday life of their people without giving up power over sectors that they control. They want to control everything. They don't want the people of Cuba to control anything.
Why can't you just let him breathe, man? Why can't you just fucking let him breathe? It makes no dang sense. Oh, dude, you don't understand. Socialism is just not working. Communism is not working. That's why we have to starve them, to make sure you understand.
The result for Cubans is a dark uncertainty with no surety of what's next or confirmation as to where help will come from, if at all.
David Adler works for the left-wing activist group Progressive International. He's one of the organisers of the Nuestra America flotilla that's taking aid to Cuba and was previously involved in similar missions to Gaza. Thank you for joining us. Can you tell us, first of all...
It's my goat. That's our boy right there, chat. Working with David on this flotilla and the aid delivery. And there will be hopefully more information for all of you to consume soon.
What you've been doing, and can you tell us about the mission of your organisation in Cuba and the aid flotilla that you're sending there?
with this escalating assault on the island and its people. We've taken ourselves a large coalition of popular movements, unions, parties around the world to hear that call of humanity and respond by launching a large mission by sea, by air, a flotilla to reach the shores of Cuba and to provide that critical humanitarian aid, those essential supplies, medicine and food, solar panels, for example, that its critical infrastructure needs right now to prevent a true humanitarian catastrophe that has been forewarned by high-ranking UN experts and officials.
I know you were in Cuba just a few weeks ago. How much has the situation there changed since then, and what were the limitations on aid specifically as well?
I think it's possible to overstate the consequences of a siege of this nature. This is not just any geopolitical instrument. This is not just any normal foreign policy. What we're looking at is the failure of really critical infrastructure that sustains daily life on the island. Stuff as simple as trash collection, but something as important as neonatal care.
If you look at action within Cuba over the last few months and years, though, there have been protests against blackouts, shortages before. This isn't just necessarily a US issue. The Cuban government continues to repress dissent.
If China wants to win big points, they should send a huge ass ship filled with solar panels. I'm going to keep it $1.50 with you. I think China needs to do a lot more than just send fucking solar panels. I think it is a disaster that the only thing that they've done so far is to send solar panels rather than invoke an international crisis by sending naval fleets alongside oil tankers, like taking oil tankers from Iran potentially or from somewhere else with actual Chinese naval assets and just shipping them over to fucking Cuba. Because a lot of people don't understand how the American embargo works. For example, here, I'll tell you one way that this works. When America applies a full spectrum embargo like the one on Cuba, okay, if you are a ship that has ever actually touched a Cuban port at any point in time, you no longer can work with any of the American ports. You can't go to another port that works with American ports for like 1,000, I think it's like for 1,000 days. So they block you from it. That's part of the reason why a lot of people, people in the shipping side of things don't do that. They don't work with Russia. They don't work with Iran. They don't work with Cuba for that reason. Like when America says, oh, dude, like Cuba's not entitled to our trade, they're fucking lying, okay? That's not how an American full spectrum embargo works. These people are oblivious to how psychotic the Treasury Department is, to how psychotic the American government is. Is 180 days? I thought it was 1,000 days. I might be wrong on exactly how many days, but like they literally render you, they basically make it so that you can't even fucking engage in like international shipping. Khrushchev knew what to do. Yeah. Revisionist or not, Khrushchev was a fucking lion when it came down to intervention. Okay? Putting nukes in Cuba gave Cuba the opportunity to develop, the opportunity to grow. Straight up. I will stand on that decision 1,000,000%. Okay? I've said it before and I will say it again. China has an opportunity to do more. China has an opportunity to offer protection to Mexico. China has an opportunity to offer protection to all of these other trade partners in the region that could be shipping oil, but they don't do it because they don't want to disrupt the flow. They don't want to stop trade maxing. It's disastrous. So when we have a conversation, look, I know I'm American. And you know, I'm trying to do my part. I'm trying to bring awareness to the conditions in Cuba and what the American government has done. And we're directly trying to deliver aid to Cuba as well. But at the end of the day, you know, other global superpowers do have a lot more power at their disposal to game out the system a little bit, to offer a lifeline to the fucking Cuban population. And it's disgusting that they're choosing not to do that. It's disgusting that they're choosing to turn a blind eye to these atrocities. Right now, there's a very limited amount of aid that is entering the island. And aid from America is not illegal either, for the record, until they turn around and make it illegal. But yeah, like right now, Oh, it's 180 days. Sorry. Okay. OFAC, Office of Foreign Assets Control in the Treasury Department will openly tell you, like, you can actually, well, there's a new executive order that just came out from the Trump administration that says, like, American ports can no longer send ships to Cuba because we're fucking disgusting. But the reality is, you can get an OFAC clearance to bring aid to Cuba. We're going to get an OFAC clearance to bring aid to Cuba, for example. The thing that they're not allowing to send into Cuba, it's identical to like what Israel does with Gaza, right? It's identical to what Israel does with Gaza. Every single piece of humanitarian aid that goes into Gaza goes through Israeli control, okay? That's precisely what America is doing right now to Cuba. China has become the same imperial form Lenin excoriated. It's a sad state of affairs, and I don't know if it's just like China simply waiting out their developmentary process, or if it's coming out of a place of pure selfishness. It's very difficult for me to look at the situation and not assume that it's coming out of a place of pure selfishness. Oh, fuck off. China is not imperial at all. Yeah, it's not. It's not imperialism that China is doing. They just straight up deny any responsibility that they might have as a global superpower. And while a lot of dingus on the timeline will fucking sit there and be like, oh, you just want China to be the world police. That's not what I'm saying at all. I don't demand China to be the world police. I'm just saying that, like, there can be some room for selfless behavior, especially if that selfless behavior could yield opportunity down the line for a self-invested, self-interested China. Like, China would never do what Russia did to Ukraine, right? They just wouldn't. Let's be real. They would not do that. But they're taking great advantage of the situation, the collapse of the international order. It's all great. It's all wonderful for them. Sometimes it's okay for you to push in the right direction. And Russia's actions, obviously, in Ukraine are not correct, are not moral, but I'm just saying, like, for Chinese interests or for shattering American hegemony, it has been very successful. Okay? It has been very successful. China just waits it out every single time. Someone else has to fucking do it, and then they'll, like, sit there and reap the rewards. Well, this is an opportunity for China to show the rest of the world that they are actually a superpower that is invested in stability, is invested in, like, you know, humanitarian aid. Show the world by tilting the scales a little bit that the United States of America is not a force for good. I think that kind of initiative does play a big role in getting people on board. It would absolutely shatter the xenophobic sentiment that many of these European counterparts have, or at least chip away at it. Okay? But wouldn't that open the permission structure with America and Taiwan? Open the permission structure? What are we talking about? That permission structure is wide open. What more could America do in terms of interference in Taiwan? They already have given Taiwan every single fucking piece of weapon that they possibly could have. I don't agree Europeans don't care about Cuba. I don't agree with you. The United Nations has consistently demanded that America release the embargo around Cuba year over year, with two exceptions, Israel and the United States of America. And that's precisely the reason why the embargo remains. I think the amount of goodwill that they would secure is incredible. China won't outright give military aid and never does it publicly. Both China and Vietnam has had party leadership visit Cuba consistently. Yeah, I know. That doesn't fucking mean anything. America did a kidnapping. America kidnapped the leader of Venezuela while the fucking Chinese ambassador was in Caracas, dude. What are you talking about? China should be a lot more responsible near its own region, but expecting them to try and counterbalance the USA and the Americas is so crazy. I think it's just a different approach to foreign policy that would yield tremendous benefits for China down the line in ways that China cannot currently foresee. They just have a different approach. They want trade maxing. They want business as usual. They want America to continue collapsing on its own weight. That's it. That's their goal. That's what they're going to keep doing. There's not really anything we can do. And also, who am I to fucking complain? I mean, as long as China remains a superpower without overt imperialist ambitions, and that is the fucking case, by the way, right? You'll say Tibet, you'll say Xinjiang, you'll say Taiwan. All of these places have, in the eyes of the Chinese government, always been historically a part of China for a lot longer than the continental United States of America has ever fucking existed. I'm not saying right or wrong, by the way. I'm just simply telling you what their motivations are. And they haven't fucking moved beyond that an inch. Like, people talk about the South China Sea. They're building islands in the South China Sea. Once again, like, establishing a security perimeter in their own fucking backyard is the opposite of what we're talking about. If you're talking about imperialism, like, and also on top of that, they already have Asian cooperation with every single country with the exception of the Philippines. Like, what their goals are is the opposite of what America has done. We're talking about, you know, we're talking about a fucking country with 800 military bases that we know of, or 1,000 military bases that we know of. It's not even close. They are not ambitious about advancing the interests of empire, no matter how hard Americans in the Western world says they are. Are they dominant and oftentimes heavy-handed in their approach to striking down any sort of like separationist movement? Abso-fucking-lutely. Okay? But having said that, like, even their approach to Taiwan, like, a lot of people misunderstand it, or they think like, oh, they're going to bomb Taiwan. They're going to invade Taiwan militarily. It's like, brother, you just don't understand what the Chinese approach to Taiwan is if you feel that way. Partially, I mean, I'm not even saying that it won't happen ever, but it is absolutely the fucking last possible option. And the reason for why I say that is because their approach to Taiwan is entirely different. They see people in Taiwan as their brothers, as their own people. They don't see it as like it's not even like Russia versus Ukraine. They don't see Taiwan as a colony to dominate. They see Taiwan as a stain on their national reputation, like the last remaining aspect of the century of humiliation that America's held on to. They don't want to fucking kill people in Taiwan. They want Taiwan to become a part of the People's Republic of China. It's also a constant security fear, obviously. Mao would have helped Cuba? Maybe. Why won't they accept their independence then? It's so funny because even if you ask the people of Taiwan, the highest priority is not immediate independence. The highest ranking opinion in Taiwan is stay the course. Because right now they have a foothold in both the Western world and also in China. A lot of you don't recognize that because you've been fucking duped by, I don't know, whatever newspaper you read or whatever article you read. There has never been a moment, as far as I know, especially in the last like couple of decades, where the number one position in Taiwan by the Taiwanese population is anything but stay the course. The second most popular position, of course, is independence in the future, potentially, but stay the course now. A lot of you don't understand, like, that there is a tremendous amount of financial benefits. What is this? For Taiwan to maintain the same structure that they have, the same political structure that they have with the People's Republic. Sounds like you want China to fall into the similar traps of the USSR. Oh, sure. Anyway, it's rather hypocritical of me, of course, to sit here and demand China do something. I just, when you're out of options, you look to whoever is a powerful force on the planet.
And public criticism. So there is a history of this as well. You can't necessarily place it all on the US.
The Cuban government has long assumed responsibility for critical policies that would provide for the well-being of their people. There's no shortage of criticism, open discussion, and dialogue on the island about that. But let's be abundantly clear. This is in plain black and white, written into State Department memos and cables reaching back for 60 years of the U.S. blockade, where the explicit goal of U.S. policy is to strangle the island, inflame hunger and desperation that would lead to the type of social unrest that could cause the collapse of the regime. I would call on people to really question, before we normalize these tactics of siege in utter and explicit violation of international law, why are we doing this? What threat does Cuba represent to the U.S. American people? What threat does Cuba represent to the international community, a country that has led medical brigades and provided for the poor all across the world throughout the history of its revolution since 1959?
What do you make of the international response to this crisis then? Has Cuba been abandoned by its traditional allies, particularly in South America as well?
One of the things we've seen in recent days is governments increasingly wake up. Those allies of Cuba, historical allies of Cuba, wake up to this humanitarian crisis. Morena and the government of Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico, for example, sending humanitarian aid. The government of Gabriel Boric promising to do so, as well as the government of Pedro Sanchez. But what Cuba also needs right now is petroleum. It's really going to be up to states to respond to their own obligations under international law and ensure that the Cuban people have access to the critical energy that sustains the infrastructure that will keep people alive in the coming hours, days, weeks, and months.
And where do you think Russia could come into that, I suppose? Russia or China in the mix for that?
Certainly, China's played a hugely constructive role in supporting the construction of solar and renewable energy on which Cuba will now be forced to rely. And this is a rapidly deteriorating situation. So even if we take a radiography of the international community of where they are now, we should hope that by tomorrow, by the end of this week, there are 10, 20, 50 more governments that understand the gravity of this crisis.
What do you make of President Trump calling this a humanitarian crisis?
What's amazing is seeing the backtracking or the defense of this U.S. policy by people who pretend to say, oh, there's no blockade, there's no embargo. Trump on Air Force One just yesterday, Tuesday, 11th of February, or Tuesday, the 16th, said himself, there's an embargo, there's no money, there's no oil. He bragged of this to his own audience of reporters on Air Force One. So the United States is very explicitly using the humanitarian crisis as an instrument of leverage in its own long-standing effort to overthrow the government of Cuba and to oversee essentially its annexation with the United States, led by the long-standing anti-communist crusader Marco Rubio there at the State Department.
Cuba's not Venezuela. It doesn't have the oil reserves. It doesn't have the natural resources that Venezuela has. So this seems to be about ideology as much as anything else. So are there different challenges to this so-called Don Roe doctrine that Trump has alluded to in Cuba? And what do you see of those?
Once again, the asphyxiation of Cuba begs the question, why is the United States doing this? And why is the international community so silent in the face of the Cuban people's suffering? We should be really all concerned, no matter our own ideological stripe, about what it means for a government to basically create an enemy out of an ideology, a difference of opinion, a difference of a proposal for how people want to govern their own country under the banner of their self-determination, and use that as the basis for, like I said, a siege of the island. So I think that this sets a very, very dangerous precedent. Do we allow people to determine their own future and to express freely their solidarities with others across the world, or do we allow Donald Trump to dictate the terms of that solidarity and to strangle off anything that they see as a threat to their ideological vision?
I saw a bit ago, you said you wish the Soviet Union still existed. Why do you feel that way? I mean, look at what we're doing to fucking Cuba, brother. We could not do to Cuba what we are doing to Cuba right now when the Soviet Union existed. Why? Because they put their fucking nukes in Cuba. Okay? There you go. I care about people's survival. I care about moving society in a more egalitarian direction. And the USSR, for all of its faults and failures, was the one goddamn fucking polar opposite power in the planet that would do what was necessary. And even then, it was done because America had put nukes and missile bases in Turkey. They did it after. Okay? They did it after, but it still helped. It's that fucking simple. If you hate your deteriorating material conditions now, remember that acceleration of demise happened after the dissolution of the USSR. Our capital owners got endlessly hungry and greedy when they realized that there was no more threat of an alternative out there.
Of global supremacy.
David Adler from Progressive International. Thank you very much.
What's this guy's stance on Gaza? David Adler's? I mean, he was on the broadcast before when I interviewed him when he was after he was arrested and was tortured in an Israeli prison for participating and putting together the Samud flotilla. So hopefully that helps you understand where his assessment is here. Oh, I wanted to see Plattner's answer to Cuba.
Yes, I would very much like to see a normalization of relations with Cuba. I think we also need to remove the blockade. I mean, it's honestly childish. I mean, we have tried to destroy that country because we were mad about the fact it went to a different model of government and a different model of like economic understanding than ours. And much like the whole like we try to break something and then we get to point at it and say that it doesn't work. I think that's exactly what we've done to Cuba. And it is, I think
Dude, come on. Someone is saying, oh, he said childish, more like evil. It's like, you're right, but what fucking American congressperson running for office is saying anything close to this truth? Like, this is literally the best possible, most clear answer that I've heard from any American congressperson. You might not want to trust him because of his background or whatever, but like, you're out of your fucking mind, dude.
It's unconscionable, and it's frankly childish. Yeah. It's also utterly absurd that it went on for as long as it did. I mean, I have a lot of criticisms of the Obama administration. Something I think was just fundamentally.
I'm so mad at your supposed leftist audience for giving this guy no charitability. That's not true. Most of the people in this community, like Grant Plattner, they're just too afraid of fucking people coming out and yelling about it. They don't want to say it out loud for a couple of reasons. One, because they don't want to come across like they've been fooled if it turns out that he's like an op. Some are skeptical for understandable reasons, given his given his track record in service, joining fucking Blackwater, all this stuff. But I've made my position very clear. Part of the reason why a lot of people yelled at me at the time.